Priya was 28 years old when she learned that life can change in a single moment. She just did not know that moment was coming for her on an ordinary Tuesday morning in Mumbai. She worked as an interior designer at one of the best firms in the city. Her reputation was solid. Clients trusted her because she listened to what they wanted and then gave them something even better. She had spent 7 years building that reputation, and she protected it carefully. That Tuesday, her boss called her into his office. He looked excited, which was unusual for a man who rarely smiled. He told her that they had landed the biggest contract in the company's history. A luxury hotel chain wanted to redesign all 15 of their properties across India. The project would take over a year to complete. It would make the firm famous. And he wanted Priya to lead it. She felt a rush of pride but kept her expression calm. She asked who the client was. Her boss slid a folder across the desk. The name on it was Arjun Malhotra. Priya knew that name. Everyone in Mumbai knew that name. The Malhotra family owned hotels, shopping centers, and half the commercial real estate in 3 states. The old man, Vikram Malhotra, had been a legend. But he had passed away 8 months ago, leaving everything to his only son. Arjun Malhotra was 32 years old and already one of the richest men in the country. But unlike his father, who had been warm and beloved, Arjun had a different reputation. People called him cold, distant, impossible to please. Some said he had become that way after his father died. Others said he had always been like that. Priya did not care about rumors. She cared about doing her job well. So, she took the folder and started preparing for her first meeting with the client. The meeting was scheduled at the Malhotra corporate office, a glass tower in the business district. Priya arrived 15 minutes early, wearing her best gray suit and carrying a portfolio of her previous work. She felt confident. She had done her research. She knew exactly what these hotels needed. But when she walked into the conference room, that confidence flickered for just a second. Arjun Malhotra was already there, standing by the window with his back to the door. He was tall, with broad shoulders and dark hair that was slightly longer than most businessmen kept theirs. When he turned around, Priya noticed his eyes first. They were deep brown, almost black, and they held no warmth at all. He looked at her the way someone might look at a piece of furniture they were thinking about buying. He did not greet her. He simply said, "Show me what you have." Priya felt a flash of irritation, but pushed it down. She opened her portfolio and began her presentation. She talked about color schemes, lighting concepts, and how to create spaces that felt both luxurious and welcoming. She had spent 3 nights preparing this presentation. She knew it was good. Arjun listened without expression. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "This is generic. I could get this from any designer in the city." Priya felt her face grow hot. She wanted to argue, to defend her work, but she forced herself to stay professional. She asked him what he was looking for specifically. He walked toward the table where she had spread out her samples. "My father built these hotels," he said, his voice flat. "Every single one of them meant something to him. I will not let them become ordinary. If you cannot understand that, then we are wasting each other's time." Something about his words caught Priya's attention. Beneath the coldness, she heard something else. Pain, maybe, or pressure. She was not sure. She took a breath and tried again. She asked him to tell her about his father's vision. What had the old man wanted these hotels to represent? What feelings did he want guests to experience? For the first time, something shifted in Arjun's expression. He looked at her differently, as if seeing her for the first time. He began to talk about his father, slowly at first, then with more detail. He described how Vikram Malhotra had believed that a hotel should feel like a second home, a place where strangers became friends and memories were made. Priya listened carefully, taking notes. As Arjun spoke, she noticed his voice changing. It became less harsh, almost human. They talked for over an hour. At the end, they both reached for the same fabric sample at the same moment. Their hands touched. It was brief, just a brush of fingers. But Priya felt something like electricity run up her arm. She pulled her hand back quickly, confused by her own reaction. When she looked up, Arjun was staring at her with those dark eyes. His expression was unreadable, but something had changed in the air between them. Neither of them said anything about it. Priya gathered her materials and said she would prepare a new presentation based on their discussion. Arjun nodded and walked her to the door. As she left, she could feel his gaze on her back. She told herself it meant nothing. He was just a difficult client, and she was just doing her job. But as she stepped into the elevator, her heart was still beating faster than normal. She had no idea that this was only the beginning. The next few weeks tested Priya in ways she had not expected. The hotel redesign project was massive, and Arjun Malhotra was involved in every single detail. Most clients handed over the work and checked in occasionally. But Arjun was different. He wanted to see every plan, approve every choice, and visit every location in person. That meant Priya had to travel with him. Their first trip was to Udaipur, where one of the oldest Malhotra hotels sat on the edge of a lake. The property was beautiful, but tired. It needed new life, and Priya had ideas about how to give it exactly that. But working with Arjun in close quarters was harder than she had imagined. On the flight, he barely spoke to her. He sat across the aisle, reading reports on his laptop, his face set in that permanent, serious expression. Priya tried to focus on her own work, but she found herself glancing at him from time to time. She wondered what was going on inside his head. Was he always this closed off, or was there something more beneath the surface? When they landed and drove to the hotel, Arjun finally started talking, but it was all business. He pointed out problems with the entrance, the lobby, the hallways. He was critical of almost everything, and Priya had to remind herself to stay patient. This was her job. She was a professional. They spent the entire day walking through the property, taking notes, and arguing about what should change. Arjun wanted to preserve the traditional architecture. Priya agreed, but she also wanted to add modern touches that would appeal to younger guests. They went back and forth, neither willing to give in easily. By evening, Priya was exhausted. She excused herself to go to her room, planning to order dinner and sleep early. But an hour later, there was a knock on her door. It was Arjun, holding 2 plates of food from the hotel restaurant. He said the restaurant was nearly empty and eating alone felt strange. He asked if she would join him on the terrace to continue their discussion. Priya hesitated. This felt different from their usual professional interactions. But she was hungry, and she had to admit she was curious about this man who revealed so little of himself. They sat on the terrace overlooking the lake. The water reflected the last light of sunset, turning everything golden and pink. For a while, they ate in silence. Then Arjun started talking, not about work, but about this hotel specifically. He told her that this was the first hotel his father had ever bought. Arjun had been 10 years old when his family moved to Udaipur for 6 months, while his father oversaw the renovation. Those had been some of the happiest days of his childhood. His father had taught him to swim in that lake. They had eaten dinner on this very terrace almost every night. Priya listened without interrupting. She could hear the love in his voice when he spoke about his father. She could also hear the grief. This was not the cold businessman everyone talked about. This was a son who missed his father terribly. When he finished, she asked him why he did not share these stories more often. People might understand him better if they knew what was in his heart. Arjun looked at her for a long moment. Then he said that understanding was not something he expected from people. Most people wanted something from him. Money, connections, favors. Very few actually cared about who he was beneath the name. Priya felt something shift inside her. She recognized that loneliness. She had felt it herself, being a woman in a competitive field, always having to prove herself, always wondering if people valued her work or just wanted to use her connections. She told him she understood more than he realized. They talked late into the night, the conversation moving from business to personal and back again. Priya learned that Arjun loved old books and hated social media. He had studied architecture before taking over the family business. He had wanted to design buildings himself once, but duty had pulled him in a different direction. Priya shared her own stories, how she had grown up in a small town and moved to Mumbai with nothing but talent and determination. How her parents had wanted her to get married instead of chasing a career. How she had proved everyone wrong. By the time they said goodnight, something had changed between them. The tension was still there, but it was different now. Warmer. More complicated. Over the next few weeks, they traveled to more hotels across India. Jaipur, Goa, Kerala, Delhi. Each trip brought them closer. They developed a rhythm of working together, finishing each other's sentences, anticipating what the other would say. The arguments became less frequent, replaced by a kind of understanding that did not need words. One night in Jaipur, they were working late on the rooftop of the hotel, reviewing blueprints under the stars. The desert air was warm during the day, but turned cold after sunset. Priya had not brought a jacket, and she could not hide her shivering. Arjun noticed immediately. Without saying anything, he stood up, removed his own jacket, and walked over to her. He placed it gently over her shoulders, but as he did, his fingers touched her back, just for a second, through the thin fabric of her blouse. Priya froze. The touch was light, almost nothing, but she felt it everywhere. Her heart started racing. Her skin felt like it was on fire where his fingers had been. She looked up at him. He was standing very close, looking down at her with those dark eyes. For a moment, neither of them moved. The air between them felt electric, charged with something neither had named yet. Then, Arjun stepped back. He cleared his throat and said it was getting late. They should continue tomorrow. Priya nodded, not trusting her voice. She watched him walk away, her heart still pounding. She pulled his jacket tighter around herself, breathing in the scent of him that lingered in the fabric. She knew she was in trouble. This was supposed to be just a job. He was supposed to be just a client. But, somewhere along the way, everything had changed, and she had no idea what to do about it. After Jaipur, things became complicated in ways Priya could not ignore. She returned to Mumbai and tried to focus on work. She told herself that what she felt was nothing, just attraction. Maybe. The result of spending too much time with someone, it would pass. But it did not pass. Every time her phone buzzed with a message from Arjun, her heart jumped. Every time they had a video call to discuss the project, she found herself looking at his face more than the documents they were reviewing. She noticed small things now. The way he rubbed his temple when he was tired. The rare half-smile that appeared when something amused him. The way his voice softened when he talked about the hotels. She was falling for him. She knew it, and she had no idea if he felt the same way. Their interactions remained professional on the surface. But beneath that surface, something was building. There were moments when their eyes met, and held for a beat too long. Times when his hand brushed against hers, and neither of them pulled away immediately. Once, during a late-night call, he had asked her what she was doing. She had said she was drinking tea and looking out the window. He had said he wished he was there with her. Then he had quickly changed the subject. But those words stayed with Priya for days. The first hotel renovation was completed in 4 months. It was a triumph. The property in Udaipur had been transformed into something beautiful, modern, yet respectful of its history. Critics loved it. Guests loved it. Even Arjun seemed satisfied, which Priya had learned was rare. To celebrate, the Malhotra company organized a grand gala. Business partners, investors, journalists, and important people from across the country were invited. As the lead designer, Priya was expected to attend. She spent days preparing. She wanted to look perfect, though she told herself it was for professional reasons. She chose a deep blue gown that was elegant and sophisticated. The back was open, which was fashionable that season. She had her hair styled and kept her makeup simple. When she looked in the mirror before leaving her apartment, she felt confident. But nothing prepared her for the moment she walked into the ballroom. The space was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting soft light everywhere. Hundreds of people filled the room, all dressed in their finest. Waiters moved through the crowd carrying champagne. Music played softly in the background. Priya scanned the room, looking for familiar faces from work. But before she found them, she felt something strange. A prickling sensation on her skin, as if someone was watching her. She turned and saw Arjun standing across the room. He was wearing a black suit that fit him perfectly. His hair was styled back, and he looked more handsome than she had ever seen him. But what caught her attention was the way he was looking at her. He was not just glancing. He was staring, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. For a moment, neither of them moved. The crowded room seemed to fade away. There was only him looking at her, and her looking back, and this invisible thread pulling between them. Then someone called Arjun's name, and the spell broke. He turned to greet a guest, and Priya forced herself to breathe normally. She walked further into the room, accepting a glass of water from a passing waiter. Her hand was trembling slightly. The evening progressed. Priya talked to colleagues, accepted compliments on the renovation, smiled until her face hurt. But she was always aware of where Arjun was in the room, and she noticed that he seemed aware of her too. Their eyes kept meeting across the crowd. Then something happened that changed everything. A man approached Priya. He was older, maybe 50, with expensive clothes and a confident smile. He introduced himself as a business associate of the Malhotra family. He complimented her work on the hotel. He asked about her background, her career, her future plans. Priya answered politely, but something about him made her uncomfortable. He stood too close. He touched her arm when he talked. His eyes kept drifting down in ways that felt disrespectful. When he suggested they step outside to continue their conversation somewhere more private, Priya felt her stomach drop. She tried to decline gracefully, but he was persistent. His hand moved to her waist, pulling her slightly toward the terrace doors. Before Priya could react, a voice cut through the noise. "Excuse me." It was Arjun. He appeared at her side, as if he had materialized from thin air. His face was calm, but his eyes were hard as stone. "I need to borrow Miss Priya," he said to the older man. "We have urgent project matters to discuss." The man's smile faltered. He looked at Arjun, then at Priya, then back at Arjun. Whatever he saw in Arjun's expression made him step back. He mumbled something about catching up later and disappeared into the crowd. Priya let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. She turned to thank Arjun, but the words died on her lips. He was standing very close to her. His hand moved to her lower back, where her gown left her skin exposed. His palm was warm against her bare skin. The touch was gentle, but firm, protective, and Priya felt herself melt. It was the only word for it. Every part of her body responded to that simple contact. Her knees went weak. Her heart raced. Heat spread from where his hand rested through her entire being. She looked up at him, unable to hide what she was feeling. Arjun was looking at her too, and for the first time, his mask was completely gone. His eyes were full of emotion, want, fear, Hope. I am tired of pretending, he said quietly. His voice was rough. Are you? Priya could not speak. She just shook her head. Arjun's hand pressed slightly firmer against her back. He guided her away from the crowd, toward a quiet corner near the windows. The city lights glittered below them, but neither looked at the view. I have been fighting this since Udaipur, he said. Maybe even before that. But I cannot fight it anymore. Priya finally found her voice. Neither can I. He lifted his other hand and gently touched her face. His fingers traced her cheek, her jaw, the corner of her lips. It was such a tender gesture, so different from the cold businessman the world thought he was. I do not know what this means, he admitted. I do not know how to do this. But I know that when I saw that man touch you, I wanted to tear him apart. I know that you are the first thing I think about in the morning and the last thing I think about at night. I know that I cannot imagine finishing this project and never seeing you again. Priya's eyes filled with tears. She had been so afraid that she was alone in this feeling. Hearing him say these words felt like stepping into sunlight after a long winter. I feel the same, she whispered. All of it. Arjun smiled then, a real smile, full and warm. It transformed his entire face. He looked younger, lighter, happier than she had ever seen him. Then we figure it out together, he said. Whatever comes. His hand was still on her back. She could feel every point of contact like a brand on her skin. But for the first time, she did not want to pull away. She wanted to lean in. She wanted more. So, she did. She stepped closer until there was almost no space between them. She rested her head against his chest and felt his arms wrap around her. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other while the party continued around them. Neither knew what the future held. There would be complications, challenges, and obstacles. But in that moment, none of it mattered. They had finally stopped pretending. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Priya had ever experienced. Being with Arjun felt like discovering a secret room in a house she had lived in her whole life. Everything was familiar, yet completely new. They kept their relationship private at first, not because they were ashamed, but because they wanted to protect something precious before the world could touch it. They met for quiet dinners at restaurants where no one recognized them. They took long drives along the coast at night, talking for hours about everything and nothing. They worked side by side on the remaining hotel projects, stealing glances and small touches when no one was watching. Priya learned new things about Arjun every day. She learned that he woke up before sunrise and went running before work. She learned that he read poetry when he could not sleep. She learned that beneath his serious exterior was a man capable of great tenderness, who remembered every small detail she ever mentioned and surprised her with thoughtful gestures. But she also learned that loving him would not be simple. The first sign of trouble came about 2 months into their relationship. Priya was at her office when she noticed her colleagues whispering. When she walked past, they went quiet. She tried to ignore it, but by lunchtime, she could not pretend anymore. Someone had seen them together. A photograph had appeared on a social media account, showing Arjun and Priya leaving a restaurant. The caption was vicious, suggesting that Priya had used her relationship to secure the biggest contract of her career. That she was a gold digger. Climbing her way up through the businessman's bed, Priya felt sick when she read it. Years of hard work, reduced to gossip. Everything she had built, questioned because she had fallen in love with the wrong person. Her boss called her into his office that afternoon. He was not unkind, but he was worried. He told her that clients were asking questions. Other designers in the firm felt overlooked. Whether the rumors were true or not, the perception was damaging. He suggested that perhaps someone else should take over the remaining hotel projects. Just temporarily. Just until things settled down. Priya walked out of that meeting feeling like the ground had crumbled beneath her feet. When she told Arjun that evening, his reaction surprised her. He was furious. but not at the gossip. He was furious at the situation, at the unfairness of it. He wanted to make public statements, to defend her honor, to punish whoever had started the rumors. But Priya stopped him. Making it public would only make things worse. It would confirm what people were already saying. She needed to handle this her own way. That night was the first time they truly fought. Arjun wanted to fix everything, to use his power and influence to make the problem disappear. Priya wanted to stand on her own, to prove her worth without anyone's help. They went around in circles, both hurt, both frustrated. Finally, Priya said the thing she had been dreading. Maybe we should not see each other for a while. The silence that followed was painful. Arjun's face went blank, retreating behind that cold mask she had not seen in months. He asked if she was serious. She said she did not know what else to do. Everything was falling apart. Her career, her reputation, her peace of mind. Maybe this relationship had been a mistake from the beginning. He did not argue. He just nodded slowly, told her he understood, and left her apartment without another word. The next few days were some of the worst of Priya's life. She threw herself into work, trying to prove that she deserved her position regardless of who she was dating. She avoided social media. She avoided phone calls from friends who wanted to gossip. She avoided everything. But she could not avoid missing Arjun. At night, she lay awake thinking about him. During the day, she reached for her phone 100 times to text him before stopping herself. The connection they had built did not disappear just because she had told him to leave. If anything, his absence made her realize how deeply he had become part of her life. On the 5th night, there was a knock on her door. It was late, almost midnight. Priya opened the door to find Arjun standing there. He was soaked from the rain outside. His hair was messy, his shirt was wet, and his eyes were red like he had not slept in days. "I know you said to stay away," he said before she could speak. "But I cannot. I have tried. I cannot eat. I cannot work. I cannot think about anything except you." Priya felt her own eyes fill with tears. She wanted to let him in, but she was scared. Scared of more pain, more complications, more gossip. Arjun continued, his voice breaking. "You are the first person who made me feel alive since my father died. You see me, Priya. Not the money, not the name, not the business. You see me, and I cannot lose that. I cannot lose you." He reached for her hand and pressed it against his chest. She could feel his heart racing beneath her palm. "This is real," he said. "What I feel for you is the most real thing in my life. Please, do not walk away from it. Over. Once. Oh. Oh." Priya stood there, her hand on his heart, rain dripping onto her floor, tears running down her face. Everything she had been holding inside came rushing out. She told him she was terrified. Terrified of losing her career, of being defined by their relationship, of not being strong enough to handle the judgment. She told him she had worked too hard to become a footnote in someone else's story. Arjun listened to every word. Then, he told her something she did not know. He had already broken off his arranged engagement. 3 months ago, before they had even admitted their feelings, he had told his family that he would not marry someone he did not love. He had chosen to face their disappointment, their anger, their threats, because he knew what he wanted. He wanted her. "I chose you before you even knew there was a choice to be made," he said. "I will choose you every day for the rest of my life, if you let me. But you have to choose too. You have to decide if this is worth fighting for." Priya looked into his eyes, at this man who had walked through rain to stand at her door, who had given up everything his family expected to follow his heart. She thought about her career and her reputation. She thought about the gossip and the judgment, and then she thought about waking up every day without him. The answer was clear. She pulled him inside. out of the rain, into her arms. She held him tight, feeling his wet clothes soak through hers, not caring at all. "I choose you," she whispered. "I choose us." Arjun held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. His hand found its place on her back, warm and steady and sure. They stayed like that for a long time. Two people who had finally stopped running from what they felt. 3 months later, Priya stood backstage at the grand unveiling of the final hotel renovation. Her hands were sweating. Her heart was beating fast. In a few minutes, she would walk onto that stage and present her work to a room full of investors, journalists, and industry leaders. The past 3 months had not been easy. After she and Arjun decided to face the world together, things had gotten harder before they got better. The gossip continued. Some colleagues at her firm stopped talking to her. A few clients canceled contracts, uncomfortable with the attention. But Priya refused to hide. She went to work every day with her head held high. She let her designs speak for themselves. She took on smaller projects to prove that she could succeed independently, not just through the Malhotra connection. Slowly, people began to notice that she was talented, regardless of who she was dating. Arjun faced his own battles. His family was not happy about his choices. His mother had stopped speaking to him for 2 months. Business associates whispered behind his back about the designer who had captured the heir's heart. But Arjun handled it all with a quiet strength that amazed Priya. He never complained. He never wavered. He simply continued living his life and loving her openly. Tonight was important for both of them. The final hotel in the chain had been transformed from an outdated building into a modern masterpiece. It was Priya's best work yet, a perfect blend of tradition and innovation. This unveiling would prove to everyone that she had earned her place in this industry. She took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. The ballroom was packed. Hundreds of faces looked up at her. Some curious, some skeptical, some supportive. She saw her colleagues from the firm, her boss, who had doubted her, journalists ready to write whatever story would get the most attention. And she saw Arjun, standing at the back of the room, watching her with pride in his eyes. Priya began her presentation. She talked about the history of the hotel, its original purpose, and the vision that had guided its transformation. She showed photographs of the renovation process, explaining each design choice. She talked about the craftsmen who had worked on the project, the local artists whose work was featured throughout the building, the sustainable materials that had been used. As she spoke, something shifted in the room. The skepticism faded. People began nodding, leaning forward, genuinely interested. By the time she finished, there was real respect on many faces. The applause that followed was loud and long. Priya felt relief wash over her. She had done it. She had proved herself on her own terms. But the evening was not over yet. As the applause died down, Arjun walked toward the stage. People made way for him, curious about what was happening. He climbed the steps and stood beside Priya, facing the crowd. "I want to say a few words," he announced. His voice was calm but carried throughout the room. Not as a client, but as someone who has watched this project from the beginning. Priya looked at him, confused. "This was not part of the plan," Arjun continued. "Many of you have heard rumors about my relationship with Miss Priya. Some of you have made judgments about her work based on those rumors. Tonight, I want to set the record straight." The room went completely silent. "I did not give Priya this contract because of personal feelings. When we first met, I found her difficult, argumentative, and unwilling to simply accept my opinions." A small laugh rippled through the crowd. "She challenged every decision I made. She pushed back when she thought I was wrong, and she was right to do so." He turned to look at Priya, his eyes soft. "The truth is, I fell in love with her because of who she is, not the other way around. Her talent, her dedication, her absolute refusal to compromise on quality. These hotels are beautiful because of her vision. My father would have been proud to see what she created. Priya felt tears threatening to fall. She had not expected this. Arjun turned back to the crowd. So if any of you still doubt whether she deserves to be standing on this stage tonight, I ask you to look at what she has built. Look at these hotels that honor my father's legacy while embracing the future. And then tell me she did not earn every bit of success that is coming her way. He paused, then added with a slight smile. And yes, I am going to ask her to be my partner in business and in life, in front of all of you, because I want everyone to know exactly how lucky I am. Gasps and murmurs spread through the ballroom. Arjun reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal a ring. Simple, but elegant. Exactly what Priya would have chosen for herself. I had a whole speech prepared, he said quietly, now speaking only to her. But the truth is simple. You make me better. You make me brave. You make me want to build a life worth living. Will you build it with me? Priya looked at the ring, then at Arjun, then at the hundreds of eyes watching them. A few months ago, this attention would have terrified her. The gossip, the judgment, the spotlight. But she was not the same person she had been a few months ago. She had fought for her career and won. She had faced doubt and overcome it. She had learned that love was not a weakness. It was a source of strength. She stepped closer to Arjun, took his face in her hands, and kissed him right there on the stage. The room erupted in cheers and applause. When they finally pulled apart, Arjun was grinning like she had never seen before. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. I take that as a yes, he said. You take it correctly, she replied. Later that night, when the crowds had gone and the ballroom was empty, they stood together on the terrace of the hotel. The city spread out below them, lights twinkling like a million stars brought down to earth. Arjun's arm was around Priya's waist, his hand resting on her back in that spot that had become so familiar. She leaned into him, feeling his warmth, his steadiness, his love. Scared? He asked softly. Terrified, she admitted. But the good kind. He kissed the top of her head. We will figure it out together, whatever comes. She believed him. Because they had already faced so much and come through stronger. Because she knew now that some things in life were worth every risk. She looked up at him. At this man, who had started as a difficult client and become the love of her life. Thank you, she said. For what? For not giving up on us. For fighting. For being you. He smiled that rare, genuine smile that still made her heart race every single time. Thank you for letting me in, he said. For seeing past the walls I built. For being brave enough to love me. They stood there together as the night wrapped around them, two people who had found each other against all odds. The future was uncertain, full of challenges they could not predict. But they would face it together, and that was enough. The end.